There is a farm in Holmes County, Ohio that has never had an electric meter. Not once in its entire history. Not in 1920 when the rural electrification program began reaching into that county. Not in 1950 when almost every neighboring farm connected to the grid. Not in 2024 when the average American household pays $2,500 a year for electricity that this farm produces for free. I spent 2 days on that farm last October. I watched the lights come on at sunset, the refrigeration run through the night. I watched the workshop power up at 6 in the morning. I watched a fully functioning modern household operate without a single connection to the utility grid. And when I asked the farmer what his electricity cost him per month, he looked at me with particular patience. He said, "I do not have an electricity cost. I have a maintenance rhythm." That sentence is the entire video. The average American household spends $1,500 per year on electricity. Over a 30-year mortgage, that is $45,000. The wire coming through your wall is not a public service. It is a product delivery mechanism for a regulated monopoly. His grandfather built the farm before the rural electrification grid reached that county. He built his power systems from what was available. The farm has refrigeration. It has lighting in every room. It has power tools in the workshop. It has a well pump. The system has 4 components. I am going to describe each one in enough detail that you can implement them on a property you already own. Component 1 is the one everyone has heard of and almost no one understands correctly. Solar panels. The small-scale direct current system that charges batteries and powers DC, loads directly without an inverter, and without a permit. Here is what most people do not know about solar power. The complexity and cost of residential solar installations in America are not driven by the physics of converting sunlight to electricity. They are driven by the regulatory and interconnection requirements that utilities have successfully lobbied into building codes across most of the country. A simple solar panel charging a battery bank and powering DC lights and a DC refrigeration unit is not more complicated than connecting a car battery to a set of jumper cables. The physics is identical. The voltage is higher, and the management is more sophisticated. But the fundamental concept is something a 12-year-old can understand and implement. The Holmes County farmer uses a bank of 8 solar panels mounted on his barn roof. 200 watts each, 1,600 watts total. They feed a charge controller, a $40 device that prevents overcharging, which feeds a bank of 4 6-volt deep-cycle batteries, wired in series parallel to produce a 12-volt system with substantial storage capacity. From that battery bank, DC power runs directly to LED lighting, throughout the house to a DC chest refrigerator, and to several DC tool charging stations in the workshop. An inverter converts battery power to standard AC when needed for specific tools. The inverter runs only on demand, not continuously. Total system cost for the solar and battery components at 2024 prices, approximately $2,400. That is less than 2 years of the average electricity bill. A system that produces power for 25 to 30 years, requires no monthly payment, and has maintenance limited to keeping the panels clean. The Holmes County farmer paid less because he sourced components over time and installed everything himself, representing 15 years of incremental improvement. Each year, the system grew slightly as panels became cheaper. The current configuration is the result of 30 years of rational, incremental decision-making. Component 2 is the one that produced the most useful power per dollar spent: micro hydropower. There is a spring-fed stream running along the eastern edge of the property. It drops approximately 12 feet in elevation over 60 feet. That 12 feet of head pressure produces continuous power through a turbine the farmer built himself from a modified automotive alternator. The turbine runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of cloud cover, wind, or season. It produces approximately 180 watts continuously. Over a month, that is approximately 130 kilowatt-hours of electricity. The micro-hydro system alone covers more than half of the farm's electrical demand, continuously, for free. from a stream that would be running whether or not anyone had thought to put a turbine in it. The micro-hydro turbine cost the farmer less than $300 in materials. The modified alternator came from a salvage yard. The runner took 2 weekends to fabricate. The pipe and fittings cost $80. The installation required a weekend of digging to run the penstock pipe from the intake to the turbine housing. Total labor, 3 weekends over 1 summer. Total ongoing cost, $0. The turbine has been running for 11 years. The farmer has replaced the alternator bearings once, at a cost of $22, after 8 years of continuous operation. I want to sit with that number for a moment. 130 kilowatt hours per month from a $300 investment. At the national average electricity rate of 0.16 per kilowatt hour, that is $20.80 per month in electricity value produced continuously. Over 11 years, that is $2,645 in electricity produced from a $300 investment. The return on investment occurred in the first 14 months. Every month since has been free power from a stream that was doing nothing useful before the turbine was installed. But before I move to component 3, I want to address something about battery storage that the residential solar industry does not discuss openly, because the discussion would make their $15,000 battery storage systems seem considerably less essential than they are marketed to be. The Holmes County farmer uses flooded lead-acid batteries. The technology is identical to what is inside your car battery, scaled up in capacity. Flooded lead-acid batteries have been available since the 1950s. They are the most proven, repairable, and recyclable energy storage technology. A set of 4 6-volt golf cart batteries, the most common deep-cycle configuration, costs approximately $600. It stores enough energy to power the farm's lighting, refrigeration, and communication devices for 3 to 4 days without any generation input. At end of life, typically 5 to 8 years, the lead content is fully recyclable, and the batteries are purchased back by the recycler. The net cost of battery storage over the life of the system is lower than any other storage technology currently available. The lithium iron phosphate batteries marketed by solar companies cost 3 to 5 times as much per kilowatt hour of storage. They have higher cycle life, meaning they can be charged and discharged more times before degradation. For a grid-tied system where the battery cycles every day, the higher cycle life justifies the premium. For a farm system where the battery sits at high charge most of the time, the flooded lead-acid battery is the rational choice. The solar industry does not tell you this because the solar industry profits from selling the premium product. The Holmes County farmer does not buy from the solar industry. He buys golf cart batteries from a farm supply store. His battery replacement cost over 30 years of system operation has been approximately $1,800 for 30 years of storage infrastructure, without a monthly payment and without a company whose continued existence is required for the system to function. Not every property has a stream with sufficient head and flow for microhydro, but more properties have this potential than most realize. The USDA estimates that approximately 30% of rural properties in the eastern United States have flowing water with microhydro potential. The assessment requires nothing more than a measuring tape, a bucket, and a watch. You measure the flow by timing how long it takes to fill a 5-gallon bucket from the stream. You measure the head by using a level and a tape measure along the stream's descent. You multiply flow in gallons per minute by head in feet and divide by 10 to get approximate wattage. If the result is above 50 watts, you have a viable microhydro site. If it is above 100 watts, you have a significant resource. That currently produces nothing because no one told you it was there. Component 3 is the one that most directly addresses the gap left by solar and microhydro in the Holmes County system. Wood gas. Gasification. The conversion of dry wood into a combustible gas that runs an engine connected to a generator. This is not a fringe technology. It is a technology with a documented history of powering over 1 million vehicles in Europe during World War II, when petroleum became unavailable. The Swedish military operated entire truck fleets on wood gas from 1940 to 1945. farmer-built gasifiers powered farm equipment across Scandinavia. The technology was shelved after the war when petroleum became cheap. The knowledge did not disappear. It went quiet. And in the communities that had been using wood as their primary energy source for 2 centuries, it stayed practical and accessible. The farmer uses a downdraft gasifier, a steel vessel the size of a 55-gallon drum, fabricated from salvaged materials. This converts dry hardwood chips into a gas mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. After cooling, it powers a small single-cylinder engine. The gasifier runs when the farm needs power beyond solar and hydro. During cloudy winter periods or periods of peak workshop demand, 1 cord of dry hardwood provides approximately 500 kilowatt-hours of electrical generation through the gasifier. The farmer accepts the lower efficiency because electricity is more versatile than heat in the applications where the gasifier supplements the system. The gasifier was built from plans available through the FEMA Emergency Management Institute, published in 1989 for emergency power generation. Total material cost for his current gasifier: $180 in steel, fittings, and filtration media. Total construction time: 3 weekends. Component 4 reduces electrical demand so dramatically that it changes the calculation of how much generation capacity the farm needs. Passive DC refrigeration. The chest refrigerator is a standard chest freezer, modified by adjusting its thermostat to maintain refrigerator temperatures. Chest configurations, where cold air stays in the box when opened, are dramatically more efficient than upright units. The refrigeration chest sits in the ground, partially buried in the north side of the farmhouse foundation, where ground temperature is stable. The compressor runs less than half as often because the ambient temperature is 30 degrees lower than a standard kitchen. Annual electricity consumption: 80 kilowatt hours. That is a 90% reduction compared to the average American kitchen refrigerator. Let me put the full system together now so you can see the complete picture. 1,600 watts of solar panels producing power whenever the sun shines, approximately 4 to 5 peak hours per day. 180 watts of continuous microhydro power from the spring-fed stream. On-demand wood gas generation for peak loads and cloudy periods. Passive thermal refrigeration using ground temperature to reduce compressor runtime. DC lighting and DC appliances eliminating inverter losses on the majority of electrical loads. Total monthly electricity production from this system: approximately 350 to 400 kilowatt hours. Total monthly electricity consumption of the farm household running all modern appliances: approximately 180 kilowatt hours. The system produces roughly double what the household consumes. The surplus charges the battery bank fully every day. The battery bank provides power through the night and through multi-day cloudy periods without any deficit. Now I want to address the demand side, because low consumption is as important as generation capacity. Demand reduction applies to every household regardless of whether they have a stream, a south-facing roof, or a rural property. The average American household uses 900 kilowatt hours per month. This farm uses 180. The difference is efficiency and thermal design. Heating and cooling account for approximately 48% of the average American household's electricity consumption. The masonry heater, the earth tube, and thermal mass systems eliminate most of that load. Water heating accounts for approximately 18% of average household electricity consumption. A solar hot water system uses evacuated tube collectors to heat water from direct solar thermal energy. Total electricity consumption for hot water after solar installation is approximately 4% of the original load. LED lighting uses approximately 80% less electricity than the incandescent bulbs that defined residential lighting for decades. If you have not done this yet, it is the single highest return on investment action available to any household. These 3 changes alone: thermal system design eliminating the heating and cooling load, solar thermal addressing the hot water load, and LED conversion addressing the lighting load, reduce a typical household's electricity consumption from 900 kilowatt hours per month to approximately 250 to 300. A modest solar installation of 8 panels, approximately $2,400 at current prices, covers that reduced load completely in most American sun zones. The entire electricity bill, eliminated, for a $2,400 investment in panels, plus the thermal system investments described across this series. The total investment to reach net zero electricity consumption for the average American household is approximately $4,400 in materials and several weekends of work, against $45,000 in electricity bills over 30 years, against a system that requires no monthly payment, no utility relationship, and no regulatory permission. The $45,000 that the average American household spends on electricity represents the cost of a subscription to infrastructure this farm never needed. The Holmes County farmer's total investment is approximately $4,500. He has saved $40,500 compared to grid connection over the same period. His children will inherit a system that continues producing power for free. They will not inherit an electricity bill. Now I need to tell you about the regulatory landscape, because this is where the pattern appears again, exactly where you expect it. The Edison Electric Institute published a document in 2013 titled Disruptive Challenges, identifying residential solar as an existential threat to the utility business model. It recommended that utilities pursue regulatory strategies to protect their revenue, including fixed charges that customers pay, regardless of how much grid power they use. The strategies included interconnection requirements making solar more expensive, and opposition to net metering policies that compensate customers for surplus power generation. In the decade following, fixed monthly charges increased substantially. In some states, fixed charges exceed $25 per month, even if you consume nothing. Net metering compensation rates have been reduced in California, Florida, Nevada, and other states after utility-funded campaigns convinced state regulators. Arizona was particularly instructive. In 2013, the state's largest utility spent $3.7 million on a campaign to reduce net metering compensation. The Arizona Corporation Commission then voted to add a fixed charge specifically targeting solar customers, framing it as a fair share for grid maintenance. Independent analysis showed solar customers were providing grid services that offset costs, yet the commission voted for the charge anyway. Solar customers who invested based on old rules saw their payback period extended by years overnight. The utility's revenue was protected. Customers were penalized. None of this affects the Holmes County farmer. He is not grid-tied. He has no interconnection or net metering agreement. His system exists entirely outside the regulatory framework built to manage customer self-generation, because it predates and bypasses that framework entirely. The technology to replicate this is available today at record low costs. Solar panels cost 1/10 of what they did in 2010. Deep cycle battery costs have fallen 60% as lithium iron phosphate chemistry enters the residential market, alongside proven lead-acid alternatives. The knowledge is accessible. Wood gas generator plans are in 1989 FEMA documents. Micro-hydro assessments take an afternoon and a bucket. The only barrier is the belief that generating your own power is too expensive, too complicated, or too regulated to be worth attempting. It is none of those things. A Holmes County farmer has done it for 3 generations with salvaged steel and his own stream. Maintenance is not a burden. An hour a month for checks, cleaning panels twice a year, and checking battery water. Compare 8 annual hours of maintenance to the time spent managing bills, outages, repair crews, and calling customer service about disputes. The grid is a managed dependency with no competitive incentive to serve you well because you have nowhere else to go. The Holmes County farmer has somewhere else to go. He built it himself, on the coldest February morning during an ice storm. While neighbors call the utility company, his lights are on, his refrigerator is running, and his life continues without interruption. The maintenance rhythm the Holmes County farmer described when I asked about his electricity costs is not a burden. It is an hour a month of system checks, panel cleaning twice a year, battery water once a month, turbine inspection once a season, generator startup and load test quarterly. Total annual maintenance time approximately 8 hours. Compare that to the annual time spent managing utility bills, dealing with outages, waiting for repair crews, and calling customer service about billing disputes. The utility grid is not a convenience. It is a managed dependency that requires its own form of maintenance, in the form of financial servicing, regulatory engagement, and the ongoing relationship with an organization that has no competitive incentive to serve you well. Because you have nowhere else to go. The Holmes County farmer has somewhere else to go. He built it himself. 3 generations of his family have maintained it, and on the coldest February morning when the ice storm takes down the power lines, and his neighbors are calling the utility company, his lights are on, his refrigerator is running, his workshop is powered, and his maintenance rhythm continues without interruption. That is not an emergency preparedness story. That is not a survivalist story. That is a man in Ohio whose grandfather made a rational decision about infrastructure before the grid reached his county, whose father refined that decision, and who lives today with the compounding returns of 3 generations of rational energy management. The grid never reached his farm because his family never needed to wait for it. Most of America waited. The grid arrived. The meter was installed. The subscription began. $45,000 per household per 30 years, multiplied across 140 million households, flowing to regulated monopolies with no competitive pressure and no obligation to the people paying the bill beyond the minimum service standards. The wire is optional. It has always been optional. Every element of what the Holmes County farmer built is available to you today, at lower cost than at any point in history. The sun is the same sun. The stream is the same stream. The wood is still growing. The ground is still 55 degrees. The only thing that was missing was this video. Now you have it. What you do with it is entirely up to you.